Children of the River, Chapter 18. What a surprising thing, Naro said, coming into the bedroom where Soka and Sundara were changing sheets together. Can you imagine who was just on the phone? That Dr. McKinnon. And listen to this. He wants our niece to teach him Khmer. Sundara lowered her pillow with the case only half on. Why? Soka demanded. He's volunteered for the refugee camps in Thailand, and he needs to be able to speak with the people. He gave Soka a pointed look. There now, aren't you ashamed to be looking so suspicious? Well, she said, somewhat humbled. He is a good man, isn't he? She avoided Sundara's eyes. But why our niece? Well, he tells me she would be a good teacher because she speaks English so well, yet still remembers her native tongue. Soka's brows went together. What shall we do? Shall we allow this? Shall we allow this? Why, Soka, naturally have already told him we're honored he's chosen her. Sundara shook the pillow into the case. But what about the son? Maybe this is simply a trick for them to be together. A fancy trick indeed. Would a man journey to the other side of the world just for a trick? Little sister, if a man is willing to help our people like this, I am certainly not going to insult him by forbidding my niece to teach him Khmer just because his son is smart enough to know a pretty girl when he sees one. Yes, I suppose that would be rude, Soka conceded, her voice small. Then, as if her approval were still needed, as if Naro hadn't already given his consent, she turned to Sundara. Very well, but you must spend every moment teaching him Khmer, no wasting time with his son. Plainly, Soka meant what she said, but it seemed to Sundara her voice lacked its old edge. Yes, younger aunt. Imagine, Soka said, a wealthy man like him going to the refugee camps. I have to admit, sometimes the Americans surprise me. Our upper-class Khmer people wouldn't dream of lowering themselves like that. But then, from the first time we met him, I knew this Dr. McKinnon was a good man, the sort who sees not only with his eyes. Haven't I always said that? Sundara and Nado exchanged glances, suppressing smiles. Yes, younger aunt. Another thing, Sundara told Dr. McKinnon, you must never step over somebody who lie down on the mat. You do that, it kind of like shoveling dirt on them. Good thing that doesn't bother me, Jonathan said from the open French door, separating his father's home office from the living room. His back rested on the door jamb. His worn-out running shoes were braced against the opposite side. Whenever Sundara came to tutor, he made this his spot, and his parents had to step over him every time they passed. But you sitting there, not the same thing. Sundara gave him an arch look. You are the son. To show respect, you should stand. Oh, he grinned sheepishly, sliding up, dropping his feet to the carpet. You could learn a lot here, his father said. He turned back to his notebook. Do not step over people. Sundara smiled at Jonathan. She didn't care how he sat or stood in his father's office, as long as he was there, watching her, making her feel warm and loved every evening. Besides teaching Dr. McKinnon useful Khmer phrases, do you vomit? Do you bleed? Are your parents alive? Sundara was also explaining Khmer customs. She told him about not touching the children's head. She warned him not to be surprised at how the men stand close to talk, how they hug and hold hands with each other. Not like here, she told him. There, nobody think anything about it. She described the practice of kaob, where they rub the edge of a coin on someone hard for healing. Sometimes American doctors didn't understand. They saw the bruises and accused the Khmers of beating their children. Mrs. McKinnon would pop in on their tutoring sessions when she came home from her own meetings, filling her husband in on things she'd found out while he was at work, immunizations he needed, passport details. According to Jonathan, once his father had made up his mind to go, she had stopped raising objections. How could she argue when it was so clearly the right thing to do? The sort of thing they dreamed of doing when they were younger. Maybe they had gotten too comfortable these last few years. But in spite of Mrs. McKinnon's efforts at being cheerful and supportive, Sundara detected a certain desperation in the way she kept bringing in heavily laden snack trays, as if she feared her husband wouldn't get food at all once he left. And concern crept into her voice when she talked on the phone. Just how easy is it to get malaria? Sundara overheard her say one time, and, well, of course I'm worried. What do you think? I heard on NPR today they're still shelling around one of the camps. On the Saturday before Thanksgiving, Sundara went with Soka to visit a new Khmer family, an awkward business, lugging the cardboard boxes of church-donated clothes up to their second-floor apartment while wearing sarongs. Soka had insisted they wear them, thinking this familiar touch might be comforting to the newcomers. Gratefully, Sundara set down her boxes at number 27 as Sokka pushed the bell. When the door opened, Sundara and Sokka glanced at each other in surprise. The wife of Poksari? What are you two doing here? The woman stared at Sundara. You are a girl who goes with Americans, her sneer said, making Sundara want to shrivel with shame. But Sokka drew herself up tall. The church people have sent us to show the new lady how to turn on her stove and work the faucets. The wife of Poksari blocked the door. Perhaps they didn't realize, she said in a shrill voice, that the new lady is the widow of a very high-ranking military official. It would hardly be appropriate for you to be telling her how to do things, would it? Sundara held her breath. Pardon me, Sokka said, but I don't think those whose husband was what in the old Kampuchea is nearly so important as who knows how to get along in America now. How proud Sundara felt to hear Sokka speak up this way. But the wife of Poksari was not enjoying it at all. I know perfectly well how to operate the appliances, she said. I'm sure you do, Sokka replied, never relaxing her hard smile. I think it's nice you've decided to be neighborly, but as long as my niece and I are here, we'd like to deliver these clothes and pay our respects. She nodded at Sundara. Come, niece. The wife of Poksari took a step back in surprise as Sokka marched in and found the new family. Taking a cue from her aunt, Sundara put her palms together and bowed to the new woman. Not a low bow, but a friendly one, between equals. We wish to welcome you at Willamette Grove, Sokka said formally but with warmth. If there is any way we can help you, please honor my family by calling on us. Head high, she gave the wife of Poksari a slight nod as they went out the door. I'm sick of the way she treats us, Sokka began raging to Naro the moment she and Sundara got home. She might as well come out and call us dirty peasants. How long do they think they can hang on the past? We've made a place for ourselves here, worked without sparing our hands. They think it's so wonderful to be born high class, but I think it means more when you've made hard work your way up. Oi, when I think of those hard times we had to ride the bicycle home from work in the freezing rain, how you'd fall down in the living room carpet and lie like a frozen corpse, every night I thought this to the end. He will break. He will never give up. But the next day you always went off to wash dishes again, day after day after day. Come now, little sister, that is past. We survived. Yes, but it wasn't easy, and if they think we should just forget how hard we've worked for our house and jobs, just act like we're nothing and bow down to them? Now, don't upset yourself. I'm only taking your advice, Naro. I've thought about what you said the other day, and you're right. What do I care what they think? We are the ones who have been here almost a required 5 years. She turned to Sundara. Do you know what that means, niece? We will become American citizens, and American citizens don't have to make themselves low to anybody. Why, we can even go rescue our relatives in Kampuchea, and nobody would dare touch us. Not when we told them we're citizens of the United States of America. This tirade bewildered Sundara. Sometimes it seemed Sokka couldn't decide whether being American was the best thing in the world or the worst. She headed for the garage to change her sarong for jeans. Maybe their mistake was in feeling they had to choose, fearing they couldn't be American without giving up being Khmer. Why couldn't they be both? In the end, after all, what was more American than coming from someplace else, bringing another culture with you? As she stepped around the corner, she heard Sokka's voice dropped. And I'm especially tired of the way she needles me about our niece, Sokka said, even when it's just with her eyes. If her son was so smart, so much better, why are no doctors asking him to teach them Khmer? Sundara pulled a pumpkin pie from the oven. Although she didn't much care for the taste, she learned the traditional recipe. It was important to celebrate these American holidays properly. But somehow Thanksgiving always made her feel more sad than thankful. It reminded her of the Khmer celebration of plenty, the water festival. Even though the pageants had ended with the war, she still remembered the lighted floats on the river, could almost feel her mother's hands around her as they joined the throng watching the colorful procession of the banks. From the banks, the American pilgrims were thankful for wild turkeys and Indian corn. But what about the Mekong? What about the mother of the waters? A river that annually flooded the rice paddies with fertility. A river so bountiful with fish that when the monsoons were over and the toll sap began to drain, the people had to only walk out and fill their buckets with the fish that flopped in the puddles. Surely America was an amazing country and worth feeling thankful for, but the way some Americans talk, do you think this was the only country on earth worth loving? From the doorway, she glanced around the crowded living room, disappointed not to find Moni and Chansung among those gathered on the spread-out mats. You invited them, didn't you? She asked Sokka. Sokka basted the turkey. Of course, but I think, she's not well. Was Sokka avoiding more questions or just preoccupied? Even if this did mark her third American-style turkey, preparing it still took concentration. The feast was lively. Everyone wanted to know more about Dr. McKinnon, who was going to the camps. Was Sokka's niece really teaching him Khmer? Had Naro and Sokka seen the inside of his house? The Cambodians pored over the beautiful book he had given Sundara, a colored pictorial of Angkor Wat, and the letters. Everyone had something for the doctor to post on their camp bulletin board. Look at this, Sokka said to Sundara, pulling her aside at one point producing a fat envelope with obvious satisfaction. A letter from Polksari and his wife for the camps. They humbled themselves to have Prom Keen pass it to us. For once, Sundara's family and friends had more than bad news and frightening rumors to trade. Although it was terrible to watch the suffering on the television, perhaps some good could come from it. The Americans were finally being forced to pay attention to the desperate situation in Kampuchea. Maybe they could help. Everyone wanted to talk about it. After dinner, while they were eating and politely praising Sundara's pies, the phone rang. A moment later, a joyful shriek split the hum of conversation, and Sokka rushed from the kitchen, screaming tears. "It's my sister, Valin," she cried. "She's coming to America." "You know how grandmother always says we must do good deeds," Sokka said, "so our next life will be better?" "Yes, younger aunt." The guests had gone now. Sundara and Sokka were alone in the kitchen cleaning up. "Well, grandmother might frown to hear me say this, but I am beginning to think we don't have to wait until our next life for our reward. I'm getting a reward in this life, aren't I, with Valin coming?" "Yes, it seems so, and surely you deserve it, younger aunt. You have helped so many people." "That's true, I have," she said matter-of-factly, "but I don't think that's why God is rewarding me now." Sundara waited. She wished Sokka would speak plainly. Obviously, her aunt had changed since that terrible day when Sundara's pent-up feelings had burst out. But was it because of that? Or was it her change in attitude toward the family of Polksamon? Or even her new respect for the McKinnons? But Sokka only wished to go over the details about Valin again, to reveal her in her happiness, her hope that this might signal the start of a good fortune for their family. Sundara murmured responses, sorry, and a little ashamed she did not feel more excited. "You are wishing it could be your mother, aren't you?" Sundara glanced at Sokka, startled. Were her guilty thoughts so plain to see then? She slid a dry plate into the stack in the cupboard. Good news was good news. One shouldn't complain. Still, another aunt was not the same as a father or a mother, brother or sister. "I'm sorry, younger aunt. I cannot help it." "Of course not. I too pray for the day when your mother and the rest of your family can come." Sokka's sympathy surprised Sundara. "I've always loved your mother," Sokka went on. "If she ever can come, I want to be able to say, 'You see, elder sister, how I've taken care of your daughter?' I could never forgive myself if she decided she'd made a mistake in sending you to Riem. After all, I promised you'd be safe with me." "Oh, she didn't care about that." Sokka's brows went together. "Of course she did. But, younger aunt, if she worried for my safety, would she have let me board a plane even as bombs fell in the airport? All she cared about was making sure you had plenty of help." "But you were a good helper." "But, little one, you were only 13, and I did have a servant girl. Surely you didn't think helping me was your mother's main thought. Why, she was frantic to get you out of Phnom Penh. She would have sent Maori, too, except she was too little, and the plane tickets were almost impossible to get." Sundara stopped drying the pan she held. "Have you ever thought of this?" Sokka asked gently. "The plane may have been dangerous, but you are alive. If you had stayed in Phnom Penh," she trailed off, shaking her head. Sundara searched Sokka's face, puzzled. Had she always felt somehow punished by their decision to send her off? She never stopped to think that her ultimate safety had been part of the plan. "Are you sure of this, younger aunt? Because if you could have been there and heard the way she kept after me, making me promise to—" Sokka waited. "Yes, go on. Making you promise to what?" Sundara hesitated, then looked Sokka in the eyes. "To take good care of the baby." There, she said it, the baby. "Ah." "And younger aunt, I tried. I did the best I could." "I know you did." Sokka took the pan from Sundara's hands and put it in the cupboard. "Sundara, you were nothing but a child yourself. This is what I've been wanting to tell you. Until that day when your her little spirit. Well, I had no idea. You thought, if anything, you see, it was my fault. She was my baby on the ship. I should have got up. I should have. No, younger aunt, you couldn't have. Not sick the way you were. No one could. You don't think so? Of course not. Sokka sighed. Well, perhaps you're right. After all, wasn't bad karma certain, leaving our house away without the ceremonies? I suppose, Sundara said, but she was not thinking about luck. She was still struggling with guilt, and her voice trembled with the most important question of all. Then you really don't blame me for that baby died? No, God in heaven, of course it's not your fault. Now, never let me hear you say that again. Don't I have enough on my conscience without thinking I made you suffer such guilt all this time? Not my fault, Sundara was thinking. Not my fault. Her spirit rose. So your mother made you promise to take care of my baby, Sokka said. Sundara nodded. And she made me promise to take care of you. She laughed with a touch of helplessness. She better get here someday, niece. I want her to appreciate what a lot of trouble you and I have gone through to keep our promises. Sundara could only shake her head at this. They were bound together in a funny, sad joke. Would her mother ever learn how hard they'd tried? Well, there are always sad thoughts for those who want to be sad, Sundara told herself, but now she had this to hold to. Losing the baby was not her fault. Sokka did not blame her, and in spite of the angry last words, her parents had hurried her onto the plane for a reason she'd never let herself believe: love. The kitchen was warm as she and Sokka worked together, the quiet between them easy. What a Thanksgiving this had turned out to be. The clinking of dishes sounded to Sundara like sweet, peaceful music, temple bells.